from our Toronto studios. This is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zahra Syed. Our top story tonight. In the past 24 hours, Gaza has witnessed another surge in casualties, with Israel killing 51 Palestinians and injuring 75 as it continues its war on the region. Despite international warnings, Israel is advancing its planned ground invasion while relentlessly shelling the city of Rafah's eastern part. Meanwhile, the discovery of 3 mass graves containing 392 bodies has prompted the Palestinian Civil Defense to seek an independent investigation. The Gaza Civil Defense Agency's Mohammed al-Mughayr alleges that there is a suspicion of organ theft by Israeli forces. He says some bodies were found with tied hands, opened abdomens, and stitched in a manner inconsistent with the usual methods of the wound suturing. Mughayr says bodies of a man and a young girl were found without limbs and wearing hospital gowns. The Israeli army withdrew from Khan Yunis on April 7th after a 4-month-long ground operation in the Nasser Medical Complex. Senior officer at the United Nations Mine Action Service, Per Lodhammer, told a briefing in Geneva that it could take 14 years under certain conditions to clear the debris in Gaza. He said besides finding unexploded ordnance in the densely urbanized territory, it was also a challenge to remove the rubble of buildings destroyed by Israel's bombardment. At least 34,356 Palestinians have been killed and 77,368 wounded in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th. The death toll in Israel from Hamas's October 7th attacks stands at 1,139, with dozens still held prisoner in Gaza. The United Nations has urged the preservation of forensic evidence from mass graves in Gaza, stressing uncertainty about the timing of requested investigations. United Nations spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric has emphasized the importance of preserving all forensic evidence, particularly amid allegations of victims being buried alive. He says while the UN can gather information, initiating investigations requires specific legal mandates that have not yet been activated. Dujarric addressed the challenges of the UN involvement, including the necessity of access to Gaza and approval from multiple countries, including Israel. He reported on the limited approval of medical evacuation requests from Gaza, with only 54% granted by Israeli authorities, leaving thousands in need untreated. Dujarric has underscored the dire health situation in Gaza, emphasizing high rates of diarrhea and hepatitis amid widespread destruction and displacement. He reports that some children waiting for dialysis died while awaiting permission to leave. Israel is planning to present a new proposal for a prisoner exchange with Hamas and a ceasefire in Gaza. According to Israeli media, Israeli negotiators have presented Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the cabinet with a fresh plan that will be sent to Hamas by mediators. The new initiative, which has not been officially announced, reportedly demands that Hamas release more than 20 Israeli prisoners. It says the proposed deal would entail a several-week ceasefire in Gaza and the withdrawal of Israeli forces during this period. Israeli media says Egypt is gearing up to push for the deal, with an Egyptian envoy set to arrive in Israel to discuss details. However, there has been no official statement from Cairo. Qatar, Egypt, and the United States are also trying to reach a prisoner swap deal and ceasefire in Gaza. Hamas is estimated to be holding more than 130 Israeli prisoners, while Tel Aviv is holding more than 9,100 Palestinian prisoners in its jails. Hamas demands an end to Israel's war on Gaza and the withdrawal of Israeli forces from the territory for any hostage prisoner swap deal. More than 50 labor unions have joined forces backing Columbia University students amid recent suspensions and arrests for protesting Israel's war on Gaza. The solidarity comes as part of ongoing demonstrations against the Gaza Solidarity Encampment, urging divestment from entities linked to Israel's policies in Palestine. The unions, including the Mother Jones Staff Union and the Irvine Faculty Association, demand the immediate reinstatement of suspended students and dropping all charges. They have criticized Columbia University's president and are calling for an end to repression. The protests, resulting in more than 100 suspensions and arrests, have sparked similar movements at universities in Minnesota and Pittsburgh, where rallies and encampments are standing in solidarity. They reflect a growing wave of support against what the International Court of Justice termed plausible genocide in Gaza, echoing demands for divestment and justice. 86-year-old Holocaust survivor Stefan Kapos is encouraging American student protesters to persevere in their demonstrations against Israel's war on Gaza. Kapos, who survived the Nazi extermination of Jews in Hungary, is emphasizing the importance of their activism, saying it aligns with the fight against genocide. He criticizes Israel's use of Holocaust remembrance to justify its actions, calling it an insult to the memory of the victims. Kapos also warns against conflating Judaism with Zionism and predicts that the global protests will pressure Western leaders to acknowledge the situation's gravity. He is urging individuals to take a stand against injustice, joining a legacy of Holocaust survivors speaking out against Israeli policies. The report underscores growing support for Palestinian rights on U.S. campuses amid escalating tensions. Senator Bernie Sanders has criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's condemnation of pro-Palestinian demonstrations on U.S. campuses. Sanders rebuked Netanyahu's labeling of such protests as anti-Semitic. He highlighted Israeli actions in Gaza, including the destruction of housing units and schools. Sanders says it is not anti-Semitic to criticize the killing of thousands of civilians, destruction of 221,000 housing units, and leaving more than 1 million people homeless in Gaza. He emphasized that criticizing Israeli policies is not anti-Semitic and urged against using anti-Semitism to deflect from accountability. His remarks followed Netanyahu's video message condemning what he claimed were anti-Semitic mobs at universities. The tensions have escalated as pro-Palestinian students at Harvard and other universities demand a ceasefire in Gaza. Recent protests at Columbia University saw more than 100 arrests, prompting calls for the university president's resignation. University students formed joint pro-Palestinian encampment near the White House. Details come after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Anti-war students from across the U.S. Capitol are banding together to form a pro-Palestinian encampment near the White House. They are demanding their schools condemn Israel's war on Gaza and divest from Israeli businesses. Students from Georgetown University and George Washington University formed a sit-in on the latter's university yard just over 3 blocks from the White House. Hundreds of students walked out of classes at Georgetown early Thursday. A smaller group consisting of dozens of individuals then marched from the Catholic University to the encampment site. And in related news, students at the City College of New York organized a protest demanding an end to Israel's attacks on Palestine. Students gathered on the campus and set up a camp in support of Palestine. On April 18th, pro-Palestinian students at Columbia University in New York began a sit-in to protest the university's ongoing financial investments in companies that support the Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands. In Arizona, a grand jury has indicted 7 aides to Donald Trump and 11 Republican officials over a scheme dubbed as fake electors. It aimed to overturn the 2020 election results in favor of Trump. The 58-page indictment announced by Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays implicates Trump as unindicted co-conspirator 1. Among these indicted are former Arizona GOP Chair Kelly Ward, state senators, and former White House staff. Charges include fraud and conspiracy. The indictment alleges plans to pressure election officials to alter results, potentially disenfranchising voters. Mays stressed the severity, saying it would have nullified voters' rights. Advocates see the indictment as a step towards accountability for election interference. Notably, the indicted electors' claims of offering a backup plan are contradicted by social media statements cited in the indictment. In a landmark decision, the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, has voted 3-2 along party lines to reinstate net neutrality rules. It has classified broadband as a public service under the Title II of the Communications Act. The move was spearheaded by FCC Chair Jessica Rosenworcel, Commissioner Anna Gomez, and Jeffrey Starks. It aims to prevent internet service providers from blocking, throttling, or prioritizing online content for payment. Advocates, including Free Press and Demand Progress Education Fund, hailed the decision as a victory for internet users and democracy. They emphasize the necessity of an open internet for participation in modern society and the economy. Yet concerns linger about potential legal battles and attempts to buy broadband providers to circumvent the regulations. The decision coincides with the upcoming election, highlighting the political significance of net neutrality. Demand Progress Education Fund senior campaigner Joey DeFrancisco said the internet access is not a luxury, but a necessity to participate in society and survive in the modern economy. Federal Judge Loretta Biggs has struck down a 19th century North Carolina law that has criminalized voting while on parole, probation, or post-release supervision for a felony conviction. The law was argued as disproportionately impacting Black voters and found to violate the U.S. Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. This decision is being celebrated by democracy advocates and civil rights groups who see it as a victory against racial discrimination in voting laws. The ruling does not affect North Carolina's broader felony disenfranchisement law, but it does protect voters from being criminalized for innocent mistakes. Despite uncertainty about potential appeals, observers say the decision marks progress in ensuring fair access to voting rights. Similar battles are ongoing nationwide, with federal lawmakers proposing legislation to address felon disenfranchisement. Action NC Executive Director Pat McCoy says with the ruling, the court has struck down racially discriminatory law that has been arbitrarily enforced over time. Mitchell Brown, an attorney for one of the plaintiffs, says the decision will help ensure voters who mistakenly think that they are eligible to cast a ballot will not be criminalized. North Carolina officials have not said whether they will appeal the ruling. A proposed California bill may require schools there to offer halal and kosher meal options. Under the proposed Halal and Kosher School Meals Act, schools must provide these options if more than 5% of the students request them. Senator Josh Newman says no student should have to choose between hunger and religious beliefs. The bill is being supported by religious leaders like Sheikh Mustafa Umar, Senior Religious Director of the Islamic Center in Irvine, and Rabbi Dov Wagner, Director of the Chabad Jewish Student Center at USC. If passed, it would take effect in the 2025 to 2026 school year. Currently, there are no standardized policies in California schools for accommodating students' religious dietary needs. The bill awaits approval from the Senate Appropriations Committee after unanimously passing the Senate Education Committee. An Uyghur surgeon has revealed he was forced to remove organs from an Uyghur prisoner who was barely alive on an execution ground almost 30 years ago. Enver Tohti was coerced into removing organs from a prisoner on the execution ground near Urumqi in 1995. Activists fear that now Uyghurs in internment camps could be targeted in the same way. Forced to flee to London, Tohti advocates against these atrocities, testifying before a United States government panel in 2022 about his experiences as a doctor in northwest China. Despite China's denial, observers say Tohti's testimony and independent verification sheds light on the ongoing human rights horrors. His revelations include forced organ harvesting and heightened cancer rates due to nuclear testing. Despite China's 2015 ban on organ harvesting, skepticism persists. In recent years, the Chinese government has repeatedly vowed to crack down on organ trafficking. But these efforts have been seen by some as tacit admission that the medical transplant system still operates on harvested organs. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. Your support is needed more than ever to continue our mission of providing informative, educational, and inspiring content to Muslims in North America and around the world. Donate by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.